Okay, joining us now, my good friend, David Toscano, the Paisano. He's the minority leader in the House of Delegates in Richmond. Hey, David, good to have you with us.
Great to be back. Long on the teeth. Come on, John. Maybe you, not me. I'm a youngster.
You're a young buck, right?
I like Gaga.
You like Lady Gaga. Well, okay.
Well, she combines some of the best of the new and the old. Anybody who can sing not one but two albums with Tony Bennett has got to be okay by us.
I tell you what, you do have a good point there. No question about it. Virginia House Democrats yesterday, you're their leader. They came out with their legislative priorities. Kind of an interesting mix, I thought. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, I got to get David on. I tell you what, you guys might be in the minority, but you're aggressive. And you said yesterday that you're focusing on the new Virginia economy. Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, John, as you know, Virginia has typically come out of recessions more robustly and faster than any other state in the country. But this time it really didn't happen, and part of that has to do with reduced levels of spending out of Washington for DOD procurement and contracting. Most of that money, a lot of that money goes to Northern Virginia. That helps generate the Virginia economy. And because we haven't been getting it, we haven't had the economic growth we need to have in Virginia. And so I think the governor has been laser focused on trying to figure out a way to generate new types of jobs, new types of industries that aren't so reliant on federal spending. And we're fully supportive of the governor's efforts. People call it the New Virginia economy, and it's going to take a while to transition to get off of the dependence on the federal dollars. And we think that's a good thing. Diversification is a good thing for Virginia.
Well, I think absolutely Virginia needs to get off of relying on federal money. There's no question about it. And we saw what happened with sequestration, especially in those areas hard hit by the downgrade in military spending, Southeast Virginia obviously being one of those areas. Delegate, Medicaid expansion is a non-starter, as you know. It isn't going to happen. So let's get, though, to the hospitals of Virginia have a proposal on the table that I really think is worth an honest debate, which is what they're calling the provider assessment. And basically what they're saying is, look, we will fund the 10% of the money that the state of Virginia has to pony up to expand Medicaid. We will pay for that ourselves. We will fund it, so it's not going to come out of your coffers. We'll take that issue off the table. Therefore, that would allow us to get the 90% of the federal money that's going somewhere else. Might as well come back here, and there's no impact on the Virginia budget. Why not take the hospital money, take the federal money, and everybody wins? What's the downside here?
Well, you're asking me. I mean, that's the question I try to lay at my colleague Republicans' feet, because we've been trying a different way every year to try to get this done, because we're hemorrhaging money to the federal government in terms of our taxes that are going up there as part of the Affordable Care Act. And at the very least, fiscal responsibility suggests we should try to get that money back. We tried different ways in the last few years. It didn't work. Why beat your head against the wall? Let's try a different way. We come up with these ways, and they keep being rejected. We continue to hear that they have a plan to help 250,000 to 400,000 Virginians who don't have insurance. But, we never see the plan. So now here's a different plan. This is a plan that speaks to a legitimate concern that the Republicans have had, that at some point the feds will stop paying the money for the Medicaid expansion. You remember, initially it was 100% of the expansion would be paid for by the feds, well, actually our tax dollars, and then 90%. But eventually there was a concern that eventually that money would go away. So now that money doesn't need to go away. It's not going to have an impact on our budget because the hospitals are going to be involved in this provider assessment. So we'll have to see what happens. But, it's a good economic deal for us. And it's a very good human deal for those people who don't have insurance right now.
Mr. Minority Leader, look, you have to have an honest debate about this because we have 400,000 people that are uninsured. If the thing were to be expanded, that's going to grow to 500,000. Every state's seen it because people that are on the bubble manipulate their income adjustment in such a way that they become eligible for that, or they live in Moyock and they move to Chesapeake and now they're eligible. All right, so there's different things that happen. But the bottom line is one of the big arguments is, look, the 10% is going to get bigger and bigger. We can't afford it. Money's going to come out of schools, transportation, blah, blah, blah. Well, the hospital's saying we'll pay it. And so I really think there has to be an honest debate.
Right, and I hope we have that debate, and we'll see. It was interesting. The recently elected governor of Kentucky came into office saying that he would dismantle Medicaid expansion. He got in, and then he found out, whoa, that money helps shore up our budget, and now he's trying to figure out a way to get out of the box he put himself in by saying he was going to get rid of expansion and basically kick all these people off the rolls, because financially it makes good sense for our budget, because right now we pay $150 million in indigent care. Right away, that money gets replaced in our budget with the federal dollars coming out of Washington. Mm-hmm. So that's $150 million you can spend on public safety, teachers, schools, environmental quality, whatever it is that you think ought to be invested in the Commonwealth.
Okay, let's get to another proposal that I'm very skeptical on, which is revising the COPN laws, Mr. Minority Leader. By the way, we're with David Toscano, Minority Leader of the House of Delegates from Charlottesville. So, David, we look at COPN. Everybody knows what that means, Certificate of Public Need. There's a group of Republicans saying, look, we need to get rid of this so that we can open up the market, free market, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's the reality, okay? It's nonsense, and I'll tell you why. There's no free market in health or hospital care. The government dictates the services you have to provide, whether you make money or not. The government dictates that you have to take indigent care. People that go in can't pay for it. You lose money on that. The government dictates you have to have you have to have certain services that hospitals continually can't make money on. What eliminating COPN does is this is the only protection that hospitals have for the profitable services that carry the whole thing. So if you take that away and you get rid of COPN, now you've got health care companies who come in, cherry pick in a particular area the most profitable services. Short-term gain, prices come down, long-term pain, because they're taking the profitable revenue away from the hospitals, providing jobs and service in that area. They're profiteering off it. The hospitals go under. Then what happens? That's what we had in Southwest Virginia. For the life of me, how does this make any sense?
Well, frankly, I have a hard time trying to figure out how it makes any sense, and especially in some of the rural areas of the Commonwealth. Can you imagine if a small rural hospital's margins are going up because they have a certain kind of imaging equipment that it's the only place that people can go in that area to get it, and all of a sudden a doctors group forms. They create their own imaging operation, and they suck all of the profit margins out of the local rural hospital. Well, what happens at that point? It becomes a kind of a death spiral for that rural hospital, which would be a terrible situation for those people who don't have the money to go on their own, and especially people who are poor and indigent. So there are a lot of problems with eliminating COPN. I think there may be some ways you can modify it to give a little more, put a little more competition in the market, but to get rid of it at wholesale is penny wise and pound foolish, and I think is going to create huge problems if it passes. And I think part of it is, John, I think a lot of people don't really realize, the hospital industry is totally regulated. There is no free market in the hospital industry, and so what you're doing by this getting rid of COPN is you're essentially disrupting the whole business model upon which hospitals operate. and that would be a disaster, I think, for healthcare in Virginia.
Look, I don't think there's any doubt about it. It would be a total disaster. And what really fries me is when people go around talking about free market. There's no free market in the hospital healthcare industry in Virginia or the United States because it's all regulated. I mean, when the government comes in and says you own this business and these are the things that you have to provide free, it's like I had one of the hospital CEOs on of I think Chesapeake, Peter Bastone, the other day, and he's like, it's like I open up a car dealership and the government comes in and says, well, anybody that can't pay for the car, well, they got to have wheels. I mean, they got to get a job. They got to take their kids to school. You just have to give them the car. I'm sorry. Well, nobody could stay in business in that environment. That's not a free market environment.
Right. You know, where I am, I've got a big teaching hospital, the University of Virginia Hospital, and we've got a lot of poor people. And they can't afford to pay for service, and it gets paid for in one of two ways. Either the hospital writes it off, they call that charity care. They don't get money at all for it, or the state reimburses them some level of funding in the form of what's called indigent care. And, if you start taking away things that they do make money on, it's going to create even more of a problem for hospitals like that.
You know, people aren't understanding. Hospitals are in crisis in Virginia. We have to do something about it, and relaxing COPN laws it's like the antichrist of hospitals. How you would even consider this is beyond me. Okay, I want to get to power. Mr. Minority Leader, let's get to clean power. A couple of days ago, the Dominion Power Chief in Virginia here, Thomas Farrell, said that this carbon dioxide thing that's going on in Virginia is going to cost the state billions of dollars to reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 32% by 2030 from the level in 2005. And we can't find any math where this works. Now, on one hand, the Democrats are saying, hey, we need a new Virginia. We need to create jobs. We need to get the economy going. And then you've got this carbon dioxide mandate coming down. It's an unfunded mandate. That's all it is. We've now got the head of Dominion Power saying it's going to cost billions of dollars in jobs, economic activity, people paying higher costs for energy. How could the Democrats possibly be behind this?
Well, I haven't seen his release, but if I'm not mistaken, I think Dominion has taken the position that the state of Virginia ought to develop its own clean power plan and submit it to the federal government. I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind that we have to reduce CO2 levels, and I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind that it's going to be expensive, just like a number of things that we need to do are going to be expensive. We've decided a long time ago that we're going to try to clean up the Chesapeake Bay, and it is expensive. I mean, we create a lot of runoff, and it goes into the bay, and we've eliminated certain things from the sources of that runoff, certain nitrogens, certain phosphorus, certain toxins that are going into the bay, and it has cost money. But a lot of people believe it's worth it because it's going to save the bay. And a lot of folks also believe, and I'm one of them, that unless we get our arms around CO2 emissions, we're creating huge problems, especially in Hampton Roads with recurrent sea level rise, coupled with the sinking of parts of Hampton Roads. It's going to make it very, very difficult for people economically to survive in the next 50 years unless we do something. So it does have some costs, and the question is, how do you spread out the costs in a way that it doesn't totally overburden these businesses and force a lot of people to lose jobs? That's what doing our clean power plan is all about in Virginia, to try to make sure that as we go forward, the costs don't overwhelm us so that people lose jobs, companies close, and we have a worse situation economically than we otherwise would have. And, that being said, there are a lot of new jobs in the renewable energy field, and there's a lot of studies that indicate that investment in renewables is going to create more jobs as well. So, for every job that's lost, you can create another job in another place, and hopefully we have people who are trained to take those jobs in the process.
Okay, so Dominion Power is saying, look, we can solve this if we can add another nuclear power plant. How do you stand on that?
It's got to be looked at. But you talk about costs. The upfront costs of a nuclear power plant are in the billions, and that cost gets
$20 billion.
Right. That cost gets spread among the ratepayers, and so let's recognize I guess you can say there's no free lunch. I mean, we're not going to solve this without paying. And so if you pay for a nuclear power plant, the ratepayers are going to pay for that. If you pay for renewables, the ratepayers are going to pay for that too. They may pay less investing in renewables than the nuclear, but in both cases, it's clean energy. CO2 is not coming out of nuclear, and once it gets built, it costs pennies to generate electricity. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at. Some of my colleagues are leery about the radioactive waste. I'm leery about that too. But some of these decisions are not easy to make, but you have to make them because we're going to have to solve the CO2 problem.
All right, only got 1 minute left. Football, obviously, we're in the middle of playoffs on everybody's mind. DraftKings, some people say it's gambling. Some people say it isn't. Much to my chagrin, we screwed up the deal with Colonial Downs based on the horsemen in Northern Virginia that basically stepped on their own head. That's gone. We've only got 30 seconds. I need a very short answer. DraftKings, is it gambling or do you have a problem with it in Virginia?
Oh, my God, John, you asked me a question. That's not in their legislative agenda. I got to look at that one. We don't. And I'm from Charlottesville. Gambling in Charlottesville, it's shocking.
I'm just mad because Colonial Downs went out of business because you guys couldn't broker a deal.
I know. My
I'm
grandmother
so upset
was very
over it.
upset.
So am I.
She played the ponies and always used to win.
Tell your grandmother I'm with her. I got to fight. We got to get horse racing back in Virginia. It's a shame. We're done. We're out of time. We want to thank Minority Leader David Toscano. We're going to have him on throughout the session. Always a fun